Now, I'm going to try and do something a little different with this video. My fiance and I just got home from seeing Captain Marvel, and we're just going to discuss it. We've yet to talk to each other at all about it. We've just walked in the door. I have no idea what she thinks about it. She has no idea what I think about it. So we're just going to have the discussion. We're going to let you listen in, and we'll try our best not to give you any spoilers. There might be some minor ones, but in general, this will be a spoiler-free review. Anyway, my fiance goes by the name Sailor Naboo here on YouTube. Say hello.
Hello there.
And now you're getting to see why I'm going to marry her. Anyway, one thing I want to make clear right away is, at first here, I'm just going to try and discuss the movie for what it is. I'm going to pretend I don't know anything that Brie Larson has said. I'm going to pretend I haven't seen any trailers or just everything around the movie. I'm just going to ignore it and give you my thoughts on the actual movie. And with that being said, I thought it was good, but not great. I'd put it on the lower half of all the Marvel movies. What did you think?
I definitely put it around mid-range. I liked the movie for what it was.
Okay, and what did you think about Brie Larson as Captain Marvel?
I think the character, at times it did seem to call for a stiffness which she portrayed, but I wasn't 100% sold on her.
Nor was I. I know a lot of people before the movie came out was talking about how she looked bored and she doesn't smile and all of that. And there is that in the movie. There isn't a lot of excitement out of her. Now, granted, the character, she's dealing with memory issues. She doesn't remember everything, and she's trained as a soldier. So there is part of that. But at the same time, even in those moments when she's supposed to connect with characters she knows, I don't get that sense from her. I don't get that humanness out of her, which, again, she's not supposed to feel completely human. She's trying to become human again, in a sense, or relearn who she is. But I really just didn't buy Brie Larson as this character.
Honestly, I'm not sure. I mean, I know some Captain Marvel and the kind of character she is in the comic book. And script-wise, they translated that pretty well. And I just don't understand. It just seemed really choppy with her. Like, I wasn't sure 100% what she was going with for portraying the character. It just seemed to go with the same thing the whole movie, where she was just confused most of it, it seemed. Like, she didn't know, am I supposed to be... I'm making a joke here?
Yeah,
but it didn't come out with funny.
There were several times she tried to make a joke. For one, like Nick Fury or Samuel L. Jackson, he was by far the funniest. He was the best character in the movie for me. I
He's
thought he was
always
great.
on point.
He looked like he was 25 years younger too. Fantastic, technology. But there were times Brie Larson made a joke, and nothing. It didn't resonate with me at all. Didn't hit, didn't strike, and there were several times when that happened with me.
She's not a comedian.
No, she wasn't very personable in this
She's
movie.
missing the charisma some of the other Marvel characters hold.
Yeah, and I think that's a big problem. Since she's going to supposedly be the face of Marvel going forward, you're trying to replace a Tony Stark or a Robert Downey Jr., and that this character just has a long way to go to being somebody who can do that.
Yeah, but she's also not... I don't know if she's meant to be a charismatic character. I mean, certain characters in the MCU clearly are.
I get that, but at the same time, if we lose... the Tony Stark and the Thor and the, Captain America. Like we need that sometimes levity, and that's what that Iron Man does that really well.
Part of the problem is that we got such a short, and we've seen again Captain Marvel in one movie, in one instance, as a character who doesn't even know who she is. So it's also very hard to pick out how she's supposed to portray a character who doesn't know who she is and doesn't really find herself through, I would say, the whole movie. By the end, I don't think she still is 100% who she was or who she is. She's kind of the whole time searching, and it's really odd because Iron Man and Captain America, we've seen them over how many movies? We know solidly who they are.
Well, I think you're right. I think she spends the whole movie trying to figure out who she was, and she never becomes anything. I think that's the big problem with the movie.
Well, she becomes a weapon. She's referred to as a weapon.
This might be a minor spoiler, but she is as powerful as I think some people were afraid she was going to be, and I think that might cause... nothing... I don't want to say you can't have a female character that can save the day in the end, but if she is the character that saves the day, in Endgame, of course I'm talking about, that's going to be a great disappointment to me, because she is ultra powerful in this movie, and, it's going to be a shame if she comes... like anybody who's seen Justice League and, all of a sudden Superman's back and it's game over. Superman saves the day. if anything like that happens in Endgame with Captain Marvel, that's going to be a true shame. It's going to rob characters who have been there for 10 years, and I really hope that doesn't happen.
Marvel won't make the same mistake DC made. They've seen the mistakes that DC has put out there.
Well,
And
they're glaring.
and they've had a careful plan. A careful plan that has spanned, 22, 23 now movies? A careful plan that has spawned a love of comic books again. A love of these characters that were...
Well, it's made it mainstream.
It's mainstreamed a lot of things that weren't before. They aren't fools. They're going to look at the track record. They're going to fix anything that they feel needs to be adjusted. And they're going to come out on top.
I hope so, because the power level she shows at the end of the movie, she's by far the most powerful character we've seen in the MCU so far.
Well, we also have to think of it this way. We've seen Hulk. We all know the power levels that Hulk holds.
Yeah, but there's limitations to Hulk. Hulk isn't going to fly, and he's not going to do some of the things Captain Marvel did in this movie. I mean, he can jump, but he can't fly.
We've seen at the end of this movie, and this is going to be another minor spoiler, she has just finished unlocking her full potential. She doesn't know her limits yet. That might be very well part of her weakness. And this is how many years later she may have discovered her own weaknesses by now. Or something could have happened to dampen her powers. We don't know that.
One thing I really did like about the movie is that it's very much a prequel to everything else in the MCU. They weren't like lingering questions, but there were answers given to things that when you think about it in hindsight, now you're like, oh, it's actually pretty interesting. That's one of the best aspects of the movie, is that it is like a prequel.
Marvel's very smart in that way. This movie fell like a puzzle piece directly into the spot that it was sitting there for it. It wasn't a spot that we all saw in advance, but it just fits in there, and it just helps complete and round out a story.
Yeah, I think it fits very well. Like I said, I just don't want I don't want her to be the answer in Endgame, and you can call me a terrible person for saying that, but, there's these other characters that I've been following for much longer that I think have earned having this big ending after 10 years, and I don't want her to steal the spotlight.
I don't think she will.
I really don't think she will either, but it's a fear I have right now, because if it's not Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Hawkeye, Black Widow in the end, and some of the other characters, I'm not saying some of the others haven't earned it, but if it's not that core group that really saved the day, that's going to be a huge disappointment.
As for the pacing of the movie, the first act seemed a little discombobulated to me. A little, not knowing what's going on. Then when they moved into the midsection, I would say, we had a lot of exposition, but it's an origin story. You expect that. A lot of exposition explaining what happened, who's who, what's going on. The third act, I would say the third act was mostly action.
Yeah, I think, most of these movies kind of jump into it and you kind of learn as you go. This one I really, I know a lot of Marvel lore, so I kind of guessed what was going on, but at the same time, it was pretty slow at the start. I didn't really kind of care for the first half of the movie because I didn't really know what the whole plot was going to be here. Okay, now that we've covered what we thought about the actual movie, but trying to again ignore everything around it, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Is this a feminist propaganda, or is there SJW laden movie? There is some of that in there. I'm, even if I could have not known anything about it going in, I would have. There were a couple moments when I was like, oh boy. That was very blatant. And let me put it to you this way. I wouldn't have had a problem with it if Brie Larson hadn't made such a big deal about it. If you want to have a movie that encourages young women to be heroes in their own way, that's great. Go for it. But when outside of the movie you tell me that that's what you're making the movie for, that really affects the way I watch the movie.
But at the same time, thankfully, that was not what this whole movie was about. They didn't sit there and throw it in your face like the actress did, saying that was what this movie was. Thankfully so. They made sure to... I would say there was definitely a couple of moments that I was like, okay, did that need to be said? Probably not.
There was one moment, and this will be a tiny spoiler, that it was very meta, and I absolutely believe this was added after the whole controversy about Brie Larson smiling came about with, the trailers. People was like, oh, she doesn't smile. Because there was one moment where she steals a motorcycle. It happens early in the movie, and the biker initially says to her, like, hey, honey, why don't you smile? And I was like, oh, I cringed when I heard that, because I'm like, you put that in after the fact, didn't you? That hasn't been there all along.
But on that same note, thankfully the entire movie wasn't centered around female propaganda and feminism and all that. It was a nice, fun movie, and yeah, it showed a strong female character, but I don't think it tried to ram down your throat that she was strong because she was a woman or anything like that. If it would have been that way, I don't think I would have enjoyed it at all. That's not what I go to the movies to see.
No, and that's what most people don't go to. Who goes to the movies just to see propaganda? And I said, I don't. There were moments of it. There were certainly moments of it. There were times, like I said, I was just like, oh boy. And I knew there were going to be people who were going to rail on those moments in the movie. And, if Brie Larson hadn't said anything, maybe people would have overlooked them. Maybe it wouldn't have been such a big deal. But now I think it's going to be.
It's unfortunate because the movie on its own, it's a good movie. I liked it. I walked out of the theater happy. Couldn't ask, that's what I ask for when I go to the movies. I don't need to come out of the movies and have somebody else tell me how I should feel about it.
I hate being told how
yes.
Going into the movie, like, this is how you're going to feel watching this. Like, let me decide how I feel watching a movie. That's why I'm going to see your movie, because I want to experience it. I don't want you to tell me how to experience it.
Exactly. I don't feel like, especially in the genre of superheroes or fantasy or anything like science fiction, I don't feel like that needs to be put in there at all.
No, most people go to, if I want to go to a movie about alien battles, I don't, I'm trying to escape the real world. And, I've said that before. It's not that you can't have it's not that you can't put a message into a movie like Captain Marvel or Star Wars or whatever it is. It's just that shouldn't be the point of the movie. And I really don't think that was the point of the movie, but I do think there are elements of it in there, certainly.
There are probably elements that will be perceived as that, even if they weren't meant to be that.
Like I said, if Brie Larson doesn't say that, I think there's still moments that people would have had an issue with. But now that she said that, you magnified it.
Right. In the past, the people would have watched it and probably spotted one moment, maybe two, that were like, oh, okay, really? But with her saying that, you could sit there and watch the entire movie and try and perceive it in the direction she chose to portray it. But that is not how the movie should be portrayed.
Okay, closing thoughts here. Again, I think it's a good movie. It's not perfect. I've just finished watching it. I usually like to process a little bit, but our whole goal was to just initially get our thoughts out there. It's not one of the best Marvel movies. And like I said, if Brie Larson and the whole controversy around it hadn't been there, I probably view this movie a little differently, to be honest with you.
I agree with that. Like I said, I would put it mid-range. It hit the notes that an origin story would hit. And I walked out of the theater smiling that I had a good night. I had a good night at the movies and enjoyed the movie thoroughly.
Yeah, it's worth seeing.
Definitely
it's worth seeing for its place in the MCU too. If you're a huge fan of the MCU, it's a good prequel to it. It really is.
It is a good prequel. You could say that it's full of Easter eggs. It was fun to watch. It wasn't exactly what I expected, and I mean that in a good way. There were things that, as a Marvel fan, I preconceived that were not the way that happened, not the way I foresaw them. And as a movie fan, that could not have made me happier.
Yeah, as a big Marvel fan, there was a twist in there that I wasn't expecting that I guess might anger some people who were big Marvel fans, but for me it was good because it caught me off guard.
Exactly.
I won't say any more than that, but
good.
All right, well, that's all I've got for you this time. If you like this video, if you like us just chatting about movies, perhaps we'll do more of them in the future, so let me know. And until next time, thanks for watching.